Welcome to Glisso English. Real life stories.
Imagine waking up to find your entire business has vanished. No, there wasn't a fire or a break-in. It was something much quieter. A glitch. A single line of code in a social media algorithm changed, and just like that, your sales dropped to zero. But the real nightmare isn't the empty bank account. It's looking into the eyes of your hard-working staff, people who rely on you to pay their rent and feed their families, and telling them that this month there is no paycheck. How do you survive when the technology you trusted betrays you? Today, we're going through a story of digital survival and human resilience. We'll explore how to handle the hardest conversations in business while learning the English you need for real-life crises. This is the algorithm victim. Let's dive into Chapter 1.
The morning began like any other, with the smell of fresh coffee and the soft glow of a smartphone screen. Jack, the owner of a boutique plant shop, sat at his kitchen table and opened the business app. Usually, the screen was a vibrant waterfall of red notification dots, sales alerts, and customer inquiries. Today, the interface was a stark, empty white, as if the shop had never existed at all. He tapped the refresh icon, expecting a momentary delay, but the little circle simply spun until it timed out. Probably just a weak signal, he muttered to the empty room, stepping closer to the window for better reception. But as he refreshed again, a cold knot of dread began to tighten in his chest. He navigated to the shop's public profile, only to find a generic error message, "User not found." 5 years of building a digital community, thousands of posts, and a catalog of inventory had vanished into a digital void. He checked his email and found no warnings, no violations, and no explanations, just an automated receipt for a monthly ad spend that was now shouting into a vacuum. Outside, the sun was rising, casting long shadows across his living room, but Jack felt like he was standing in the dark. The sales for the last 12 hours were exactly $0. He thought of his 3 employees, Sarah, Marcus, and Elena, who would be arriving at the store in less than an hour. They were expecting a busy morning. They were expecting their livelihood to be secure. Jack grabbed his keys, his hands trembling slightly, and headed toward the door to face a reality that no longer had a link.
Jack spent the drive to the shop frantically tapping his phone at every red light. He hoped that a different cell tower or a few extra minutes would magically fix the connection. When he walked through the front door, the bell chimed with a cheerfulness that felt completely out of place. He didn't head for the watering cans or the new shipment of ferns. He went straight to the office computer. His fingers flew across the keyboard as he tried to log in to the back end of his website. The screen flickered, loading a critical error message that suggested the site couldn't communicate with the social API. The digital bridge that brought customers to his door had collapsed, leaving him stranded on a deserted island. "Come on," whispered Jack, his voice cracking as he typed a message to the platform support center. He received an immediate, soul-crushing response. "Our team is experiencing high volume. Current wait times are 48 to 72 hours. 3 days without a single sale would be a disaster. 3 days of silence was a death sentence for his cash flow." He looked at the security camera monitor and saw Marcus and Sarah entering the break room laughing about their weekend. They had no idea that the open sign on the door was now a lie, backed by a broken database. Jack felt a bead of sweat roll down his neck as he opened his bank app to check the balance one more time. The numbers remained unchanged, a dwindling sum that was already earmarked for rent and utilities. He closed his eyes and hit refresh on the browser again, watching the empty white screen mock his desperation. Jack sat in the dim light of the office, the blue glow of the spreadsheet reflecting in his eyes. He opened the payroll folder, a file that usually brought him pride, but now filled him with a physical sense of nausea. The math was simple and cruel. Without the revenue from the weekend's expected flash sale, the numbers didn't add up. He stared at the names, Sarah, Marcus, and Elena, beside the dollar amounts they had earned through their hard work. Every hour they spent potting plants and advising customers was an hour he was now struggling to value in cash. A notification popped up on his screen, but it wasn't a sale. It was an automated reminder that rent for the storefront was due in 4 days. His personal savings were already thin, having been reinvested into the new irrigation system only a month ago. He leaned back in his chair, rubbing his face with trembling hands, trying to find a hidden pocket of money that didn't exist. The sounds of the shop floor drifted in, the hum of the refrigerator and the rhythmic sweep of Marcus's broom. To them, it was just another Tuesday morning, but to Jack, every tick of the clock felt like a collision to a collision. He realized he could cover maybe half of what was owed if he skipped his own pay entirely and drained the emergency fund. But a partial payment would spark questions, and questions would lead to the truth he wasn't ready to speak. The algorithm wasn't just hiding his posts, it was effectively reaching into his pocket and taking the bread off his team's tables. He checked his phone one last time, hoping for a miracle notification, but the screen remained stubbornly blank. He knew he couldn't hide in the office forever. The weight of the silence was becoming louder than any conversation. Jack stood up, straightened his apron, and forced a practiced smile onto his face before stepping out of the office. The shop smelled of damp earth and jasmine, a calm environment that masked the storm brewing in his mind. "Morning, Jack. Did you see the tags on that new Monstera post?" Sarah asked, holding a steaming mug of coffee. Jack felt a sharp pang in his chest as he realized she was talking about a post that no longer existed for the rest of the world. "I'm still checking the analytics," he lied, his voice sounding thin and hollow even to his own ears. He picked up a watering can and moved toward the window display, focusing intensely on a row of succulents to avoid eye contact. Every time the door hit the frame or a passerby glanced at the window, Jack's heart leaped, hoping for a customer. But the sidewalk remained busy while his shop remained a ghost town, ignored by people who usually found him through their feeds. Marcus was humming a tune while organizing the potting station, completely unaware that the business was bleeding out in real time. Jack caught himself staring at his phone every 30 seconds, a nervous habit that was becoming impossible to hide. "Everything okay, boss? You seem a bit jumpy today," Marcus noted, pausing with a bag of soil in his arms. "Just a bit of a headache, Marcus. I didn't sleep much," Jack replied, the lie tasting like copper in his mouth. He spent the next hour moving plants from one shelf to another, performing busy work to maintain the illusion of a normal Tuesday. Deep down, he knew he was just buying time, waiting for a digital miracle that felt less likely with every passing minute. The camouflage was holding for now, but the reality of the empty register was a secret that was becoming too heavy to carry.
The clock above the counter struck noon, and the silence in the shop had become impossible to ignore. Jack knew that delaying the conversation any longer would only make the eventual truth feel like a deeper betrayal. "Everyone, can you join me in the break room for a moment?" he called out, his voice steady despite the pounding in his ears. Sarah set down her pruning shears, and Marcus wiped his hands on a rag, both looking puzzled by the sudden gravity in Jack's tone. They sat around the small wooden table, the scent of Sarah's peppermint tea filling the cramped space. Jack took a deep breath, looking not at his employees, but at the scuff marks on the floorboards. "I've spent the last 6 hours trying to fix a major technical glitch with our social media and payment gateway," he began. He explained the user not found error and the total disappearance of their digital storefront, watching the color drain from Sarah's face. Because our sales are tied directly to that traffic, we haven't processed a single transaction since yesterday, he admitted. The room went cold as the implications settled in, the hum of the refrigerator suddenly sounding like a roar. I looked at the accounts and I don't have enough liquid cash to cover the full payroll this Friday, Jack whispered. Marcus leaned back, his brow furrowed in disbelief, while Sarah gripped her mug so tightly her knuckles turned white. I am doing everything I can to get us back online, but I had to be honest with you right now, Jack added. He felt a profound sense of failure, standing before his team not as a leader, but as a man defeated by an invisible code. No one spoke for a long minute. The only sound was the wind rattling the glass of the shop's front door.
The silence in the break room wasn't empty. It was filled with the sudden, heavy weight of 3 different lives. Sarah was the first to speak, her voice barely a whisper as she looked at the calendar on the wall. "Jack, my rent is due on the 1st, and I finally saved enough for my final nursing exam fee," she said. The pride she usually carried for her studies seemed to evaporate, replaced by a look of sheer, cold panic. Marcus didn't look up from the table. He just stared at his calloused hands, the hands that had built every shelf in the shop. "My mom's medication isn't covered by insurance this month, Jack," he muttered, his jaw tight with a frustration he couldn't vent. He wasn't angry at Jack, but the helplessness of the situation was radiating off him like heat from a radiator. Elena, the youngest of the 3, just bit her lip, her eyes shiny with unshed tears as she thought of her empty fridge. Jack felt every word like a physical blow to the chest, realizing that his technical glitch was their life crisis. He had always seen himself as a provider, the captain of a small but sturdy ship that kept everyone safe. Now he felt like he had led them straight into a storm without life jackets or a compass to guide them home. "I'm not asking you to work for free," Jack said quickly, leaning forward to bridge the gap between them. "If you need to look for other shifts elsewhere starting today, I will not stand in your way," he offered. But the thought of the shop without them, and them without a steady income, felt like the final collapse of his dream. The algorithm hadn't just deleted his photos and his followers. It had put a timer on the stability of his friends. Jack couldn't sit in the silence of the office any longer. The digital world had failed him, so he turned to the physical one. He spent the next hour at the old printer in the back, watching it groan as it spit out dozens of simple black and white flyers. "Huge plant sale, today only, cash or check," the bold letters screamed, a desperate plea for a world that didn't require a login. He handed a stack to Marcus, who took them with a grim nod, heading out to the busy intersection 3 blocks away. Sarah stayed behind, rearranging the sidewalk display to be as eye-catching as possible, placing the vibrant monsteras right in the path of pedestrians. Jack took the remaining flyers and started walking the neighborhood, taping them to telephone poles and handing them to startled commuters. "Local shop in trouble," he found himself saying to strangers, his pride dissolving with every step he took on the hot pavement. He went to the local bakery and the corner hardware store, asking the owners he had known for years if they could post his flyer. "The algorithm got you, huh?" the baker asked with a sympathetic sigh, pinning the paper to a corkboard filled with community notices. It was a slow, exhausting process compared to the instant reach of a boosted post, but it felt like he was finally fighting back. His feet ached and his throat was dry, but he felt a strange spark of energy from the direct human interaction. For the first time in 3 years, he wasn't looking at a screen to see if his business was alive. He was looking into people's eyes.
He returned to the shop 2 hours later, his stack of flyers gone and his heart racing with a nervous, frantic hope. As he rounded the corner, he saw Marcus talking to a woman holding a flyer, gesturing toward the shop's open door. It was a tiny victory, a single drop of water in a desert, but it was proof that the neighborhood still existed, even if the internet didn't.
Jack sat back at the office desk, his fingers hovering over the keyboard as he tried one last desperate digital maneuver. He created a brand new backup account using a different email and a different phone number to bypass the glitch. "We are still here," he typed, uploading a bright photo of the storefront and tagging the shop's loyal local followers. He hit post and watched the screen, waiting for the familiar surge of likes and comments that usually followed. 10 minutes passed in total silence, then 20, then an hour, as the post sat frozen with zero engagement. He searched for the new account from Sarah's phone, only to find that it didn't appear in the search results at all. "It's a shadow ban," Sarah whispered, her voice heavy with the realization that the platform was actively hiding them. To the algorithm, Jack's sudden flurry of activity looked like suspicious behavior or a bot attack, triggering a silent penalty. The machine didn't see a small business owner fighting for his life. It saw a data pattern that didn't fit the norm. Jack felt a wave of cold fury wash over him, a sense of being erased by an invisible, unfeeling judge. Every attempt to reach his community was being intercepted and buried before a single human eye could see it. "They've locked the doors and turned off the lights," Jack said, leaning back in his chair and staring at the ceiling. The digital walls were closing in, making it clear that he no longer owned the relationship with his own customers. He realized that playing by the platform's rules was a game he was no longer allowed to win, no matter how hard he tried. He closed the laptop with a definitive snap, the sound echoing through the quiet shop like a final goodbye to the feed. The bell above the door chimed, and Jack looked up, expecting another solicitor or a stray gust of wind. Instead, it was Mrs. Gable, a regular customer who had been buying ferns from Jack since the month he opened. "I saw Marcus on the corner with a flyer," she said, her voice cutting through the heavy tension of the room. "He looked like he was bracing for a storm, so I figured I'd come in and see what was rattling you." Jack felt a lump form in his throat as he explained the digital blackout and the silent registers. Mrs. Gable didn't look at her phone once. She just listened, nodding, as if she understood a language the algorithm didn't. "Technology is a fickle friend, Jack," she said, pulling a worn leather checkbook from her knitted handbag. "But your neighbors aren't. We just need to know when you're stumbling so we can steady the ladder." She bought 3 of the most expensive fiddle-leaf figs in the shop, paying in full and leaving a generous tip for the staff. Before she left, she pulled out her own phone and started making calls to her gardening club and the local neighborhood association. "Jack's shop is having an analog day," she told her friends, her voice bright with a sudden infectious purpose. Within the hour, 2 more people arrived, then a group of 3, all carrying the wrinkled black and white flyers. They weren't there because an app told them to be. They were there because a human being had asked for help. The shop began to hum with the sound of actual conversation, a warm, organic energy that no like could ever replicate. By 5 o'clock, the cash drawer was no longer empty, and the payroll countdown had slowed to a manageable heartbeat. The sun dipped below the horizon, casting a warm golden glow over the rows of ferns and ivy. Jack sat at the counter, counting the physical cash and checks that had accumulated throughout the frantic afternoon. It wasn't a fortune, and it wouldn't fix every problem overnight, but it was enough to cover the staff's immediate needs.
He looked up as Elena, Sarah, and Marcus finished tidying the shop, their faces weary but no longer clouded by panic. "I'm sending the bank transfers for your full pay tonight," Jack said, his voice thick with a relief he couldn't hide. They didn't cheer, they simply nodded, a shared bond of survival hanging in the air between them like the scent of rain. Jack walked over to the office computer and without a second thought, reached behind the desk and pulled the power cord. The screen went black, the critical error message vanishing into a void of plastic and glass where it belonged. He realized that for years he had been building his house on someone else's land, subject to their invisible, changing rules. "Tomorrow we start a mailing list," Jack announced, looking at his team with a newfound clarity in his eyes. Physical addresses, phone numbers, and a chalkboard on the sidewalk, things that a glitch can't delete from existence. He realized that the algorithm hadn't just been a tool, it had been a cage that limited his world to a 6-inch screen. He walked to the front door, flipped the sign to closed, and stepped out onto the sidewalk to lock up. The cool evening air felt different, more real, more permanent than the digital static he had lived in for so long. Jack put his phone in his pocket, resolved to keep it there, and walked home in the quiet, peaceful dark.
Jack's journey reminds us that in a world of likes and followers, the most valuable connection is still a human one. While technology can build a business overnight, it can also take it away with a single glitch. True security doesn't come from an algorithm, it comes from the community you build and the people who stand by you when the screen goes dark. Jack learned the hard way that you should never build your house on someone else's land. Jack's shop survived, but only because he stepped away from the screen and back into the real world. It's a powerful reminder for all of us. Technology is a tool, but people are the foundation. Have you ever felt trapped by an algorithm or a technical glitch? Let me know in the comments. Before you go, let's look at 3 key phrases from today's story that you can use in your own life. First, to be back on track, which means to return to the right path after a problem. Second, to diversify, which Jack learned he needed to do with his marketing. And finally, human connection, the most important platform of all. Don't forget to check the quiz below the description box. If you enjoyed this story and want to improve your English through real-life problems, make sure to hit the subscribe button. We have more stories coming your way to help you master the language of everyday life. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next story. Goodbye.